Hey there, my name is Kimberly Inez Mays, and for those who don't know me, I demystify technology for small and medium-sized businesses so that they can stop duct taping their systems together and start scaling or feel comfortable scaling with confidence. And I do this with marketing automation, operational automation, and of course, AI. And what I'm going to talk about is a little different than what I usually talk about. So I just want to give like a full like transparency that I usually pick the topics that I talk about in advance, but sometimes I do take diversions to talk about whatever it is on my heart. Because I think at the end of the day, you can find a lot of informational or educational content online. I'm just but one person who is delivering the same sort of information, same sort of content. And if you have been listening to me or following me for some time, I definitely see you and appreciate you. And I am just so happy that, you've been following me. But I also want to sometimes talk about the person that I am and what motivates me to do what I do and what drives me. And to just get a little bit more personal, more vulnerable, just because I think it's important when you do decide to take any sort of advice or any sort of guidance from anybody, you know who they are and what they're all about. And for a long time, I have not been tapping into that side of myself with this type of content, just simply because there's just so much cool tech stuff out there. But I just want to dial it back a little bit and talk about why I go all in on AI and why I am attracted and drawn to the things that I'm drawn to and why I take certain positions that I do take. So this is totally unscripted. I have no notes. See, my iPad is off, and I'm just going to speak directly from the heart. And first, number one, like why AI, right? And it's not because AI is something that is fancy or shiny or an object. It's really about a philosophy of thought. And if I may, I have to just say it goes back to just how I am in general. If I were to take a Myers Briggs test, my Myers Briggs is INTJ. So it's an introverted, intuitive thinking and judgment, right? So you think of your data scientists and your deep creatives, and it's like the quiet person in the back of the room, essentially doing the people watching, the person who knows everything, but you're glad that they aren't talking. That's exactly who I am. And for the record, I will remain silent with the things that I know about some of you guys. But anyway, I digress. That is my personality type, and that lent me over the years as a child. I was just drawn to a lot of solitary activities. So think of one player games, puzzles, um, maybe TV shows. I read a lot as well. So, not to say that I didn't interact and I didn't have friends, I absolutely did. But the types of things that I use to renew my energy and to explore more of a creative side of my brain, I definitely enjoy doing those types of things. I enjoy doing IQ puzzles, logic puzzles, the ones that come out of the UK where you do the X's and the O's. And throughout that, I decided, or I just enjoyed to find patterns in things. I love to find patterns in data, find patterns in things, systematize, and then I become almost robotic in the way that I work when I find a pattern and a system that works. So you can only imagine that it led me to really understand how coding works. And I can't remember how I fell into web design because that's where it really started back in 96 when I got an internet connected computer. I just went nuts. I remember I used to read a magazine called 17 for those who um, are 90s kids, 80s babies. There was a magazine called 17. So I remember flipping through the magazines, looking for any .com I can visit just to see a website. It was just like so crazy that I could just type in something on my computer and then there's information from the outside that's on my screen, and it's not a static book or something that is typical of what I was used to. So that just intrigued me so much. And I just wanted to learn like how those conduits work. Like how do you put something together that delivers this type of content to the masses. And I know that I'm speaking almost 30 years later, and you're like, well, duh, Kim, it's the internet. Why are you getting so excited? Because I'm going back to the 15-year-old me or the 14-year-old me. I don't know how old I was back then, where I would just be really excited, like, wow, this is awesome. And remember those old sites back in the day where, the background was like tiled and black, and you had the colors, and the colors would scroll across the screen, and everything was rainbow colored, and you would have like flashing text. And I think at the time, like, it was early in its infancy. And if you want to laugh, go check out Yahoo, Google, and a lot of the other 90s web pages. It's stuff of nightmare. But that's how I learned how to code, essentially. Right? I said, I want to build a website. I want to do this. Like, how do you do this? And back then there was no like Wix or, drag and drop this or that. You had to learn what's called HTML. And I was like, ooh, what is this? What is this? Because I was already a computer geek anyway. So it's just a natural segue. Now I get to do stuff on a computer that can actually reach other people outside my house, provided someone doesn't pick up the phone and disconnect the connection. But, it was so cool. Like, I just learned, and I learned from different sources. I go to this site for this piece, this site for that piece, and I would just fail my way up. And what I mean by fail my way up is that not everything I tried at first worked. But that was kind of the fun of it, because there would be that celebration where I finally got that tiled background or that static background to just stay put, and it was just flashing. And then I discovered iframes, and that was just really cool to me. And I know that the title of the video is like, why AI, but I'm building up to that, right? Because I was always just a very curious person. Not only was I curious, but I was also a solitary person. I loved just thinking and communicating with my own mind. Like, how can I produce something digitally that didn't exist before? And I remember learning C++ when I was 17. It was back in like 97. No, but it was back in like 99 or something, 98, 99. I think I was a senior. So even then, I was like, that was my first foray into um, object-oriented programming. I was like, oh, this is cool. So you mean to tell me that I can make these blocks of code reusable for different purposes? And we would do things like simple calculators and, simple programs, but um, it didn't matter, because I created something out of nothing. And that's the exciting part of why I do what I do, because I love to create. I love to create something out of nothing. And even in the year of 2000, 2001, that's where I really started becoming self-taught. That's where like my phone connection started becoming a little stronger. And then I would go use the Ethernet at school, at college. So, taught myself different programming languages, PHP, worked in MySQL, started dabbling to WordPress. I actually built my own CRM, by the way. So you can understand, like, these little things, even though they don't sound impressive now, we're just like, oh, well, that's nice, Kim. But back then it was really something, because most companies weren't yet online. E-commerce was a thing, but it wasn't a thing. If you look at Amazon, I think Amazon was still a bookstore at that time. As a matter of fact, to buy books for college, I would use this site called half.com, where I would buy used books for half the price, hence the name. So everything was in its early infancy. We would use like Ask Jeeves, Geocities, Angel Fire, things like that. And throughout the years, I just said, okay, well, what is the new thing? What is the new thing? How do I stay on top of the new thing? And then how do I keep creating? Because yes, I do like creating physical things too. I was into arts and crafts as a child. I love doing that. I like building things. But when you build something digitally, it's a different vibe, because you don't have to necessarily buy physical things, and you don't have to store something physical. It doesn't require physical labor. All of the labor is up here, basically. And it's so freaking cool. And I accidentally kind of fell into marketing, because, if you're a website builder, the marketing is just not far behind, because people will tell me, hey, you should do websites for for businesses and things like that. And I was like, yeah. But then when I graduated out of college, I was a computer science major at the time. Loved databases, loved SQL. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I loved all this stuff. But I accidentally fell into marketing because I fell in love with the psychology of using technology to influence buying behavior, influence outcomes. And so it was a perfect fit. So through the next like 10 to 15 years, that's where I found myself in these large agencies, really absorbing and soaking up all of the information. And that's where I found that data is king, because although I loved databases so much, I said, well, a database is just a collection of data, but what you do with it, how you plan it out, and how you make inferences from that data makes all the difference. When I was in my earlier jobs, we'd have to use logic and coding to deliver the right message to the right person. And this was as simple or complex as the client wanted it to be. So sometimes we'd have these rules where you're like, okay, well, show this component to this person who has a gold status, but they haven't made a purchase in 3 months, but they've been to um, Madagascar or something like that. You know, like the criteria used to be like really long, right? And we'd have to test every single permutation of that message to make sure that everybody got what they were supposed to get. And this took a really long freaking time. Remember, there was no drag and drop. So there was no MailChimp or Squarespace, anything like that that was available to us. We just had a blank screen and we had a cursor. And it's like, good luck. We also had Adobe at the time too, and I remember there was Adobe Dreamweaver. I believe that was I think that was the HTML editor. But I also was really badass at Photoshop and not Illustrator, but it was another one. I was really good at it. So again, taking something that was digital and making it a reality, putting it out into the world to affect change and affect behavior. And throughout my own ventures, I did websites. I don't really do websites like I used to do anymore, but I still do some on occasion. But now it's all about marketing, CRMs, data, and more data. Because guess what? AI and data are like the same thing. You need data for AI. You need good data. You need trained data. You need to understand how data is being used. And it's just now that a lot of these tools that were only available to large companies and connected individuals are now available to us. So that's my mission now, is to help people realize how much lower the barrier of entry has become, so that there are no more excuses and no more roadblocks from getting the output that you want. Because I understand technophobes, right? I'm friends with a lot of technophobes. I'm related to a lot of technophobes. So I get you. And I get a lot of people who are very successful who are also technophobes, or maybe they're just like, you know what? I don't want to spend a lot of time being involved in this platform and that platform. I just want to do the one thing that I know how to do, the things I'm good at, and the things that light me up, especially for people who are opposite my personality. These are the drivers, the expressives, the people who are like, yes, I want to be the life of the party and I want to be showstoppers, and I don't have time to sit and learn the intricacies of Python and pandas and all of this other stuff, LangChain. I don't want to do it. And I understand, I got you, because I feel like I'm best matched with those types of individuals, those types of personalities, those loud people who just want to be seen and heard from across the world. I want to help amplify your voice. And I think that this is the next evolution in what I've always been passionate about ever since I was a little girl. So if you take from my childhood, where I'm just like really enthralled and really enamored with finally being able to get online, even though I was in my teens at that point because I'm old, but you know what I'm saying? I was just so enamored about creating something digitally that was not in existence. And I'm still as passionate today as I was back then. So that is really why I am so passionate about AI. And so if any of this resonated with you, and if you've connected to my story in any way, or if you just want to say, hey, maybe this is somebody who can help me, I do have free 30-minute automation insight sessions where we talk about what's working, what's not working, where you want to be, what you tried before, and how I can best support you, because I want to turn your idea into something, and I want to use tech to do it. So spoke for a long time, and that's all I got to say about that. All right. So if you like this content, if you found something valuable out of it, I encourage you to share, because sharing is caring, and I will see you next time. All right. Take care. The video's over. Bye.